I think it's afternoon. It's afternoon pretty much everywhere. I guess out west it's only 11 o'clock in the morning. It's 2 o'clock here in Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario, and I always do the weather report. And here in Ontario, it's snowing, and there have been some travel warnings, so I'm glad I'm not driving anywhere today. That's a good thing. I see some familiar names and some not so familiar. So welcome everybody, all of our opinion members from across the country. We've got 3 gentlemen here from South Africa that have taken time out of their, it's Saturday, right? Saturday evenings. There's no such thing as a weekend for me, nor for them, I'm sure. So we'll get started in a couple of minutes. We've got people coming in. I'll get my joke in, as most of you are used to, and then we'll get started with hearing about these incredible wines from South Africa. I think I say every time we do this, I've got the best job in the world, that I get to talk to winemakers of this caliber from around the world, and get to travel vicariously. Even when I can't get on a plane, I get to be in today South Africa, and who knows tomorrow. It's all over the place. Hello, Carl. So why don't we get started? Yeah, we've already got 37 on, and it's about 3 minutes past the hour, and we try to keep it to the hour. And I told everybody on the call that I'm going to be the timekeeper, and I'll keep it moving. And as everybody should know, in the chat, if you would please put any questions you have in the chat, and we'll get them answered at the appropriate time. And Paul Barnes, nearing the end of jokes. Paul, you don't want any jokes in 2022? What's up with that? So here's the joke today. Actually, I have 2. And the first one is, when you get a wine hangover, it's called the Grape Depression. Is that good? Yeah, okay. I'll try again. I make wine disappear. What's your superpower? and then that's, yeah, don't laugh, Anais. That's why I think Anais, she turns off of her camera, because she doesn't want everybody to see her rolling eyes when I tell my jokes. So without further ado, let's get started, and let's travel vicariously through these 3 gentlemen to South Africa. We're working on 291, and in fact, the gentleman on the cover is with us today, Richard Kershawn. But we will begin with someone I think a lot of you will be familiar with, is Mr. Nick Pence, and he's from Grootepost. I hope I say that correctly with my excellent South African accent. And we talked about titles, and Nick is the chief bottle washer, and he does everything else on the estate, and he even delivers wine. I think I've heard that he's been known to do that as well. So over to you, Nick. You are muted.
So you got to get unmuted first.
There you go. Good man.
Good evening, everybody. Michael, thanks very much for the introduction. Carl, great to see you there. See you in festive mode with your background there. Yeah, so you're talking about snow and cold and travel restrictions. We had a 35-degree sweltering day here in the Cape, and lots of sunshine, and certainly no travel restrictions. The roads are open.
Yeah.
Just a bumpy dirt road coming down to Grootepost, but otherwise all very good. The Cape has had an incredible year this year with rainfall. We in Darling over 500 millimeters of rainfall, which is quite unusual. Our long-term average about 470. And yeah, so we came out of a drought about 16, 17, 18. We're pretty well drought years. So a lot of good rain. The vineyards are looking really, really good, and well on their way to producing great fruit this year. A lot of growth, obviously, with the extra water. But the vines are just sucking up all that nourishment, and hopefully pumping it into quality and then the berries. Yeah, so we're in the Darling district, an hour's drive up the west coast from Cape Town. Really well known for Sauvignon Blanc, is a leading variety in the Darling area. And I think this evening I'd actually like to talk about 3 Sauvignon Blancs that we do, and touch on 1 or 2 other wines. Our background, we came out of dairy farming. a lot of you know about. We were dairy farmers for 4 generations, turned wine 20 years ago, or 21 years now. So my dad is fondly known as the old man. So our 2 old man's blend wines are named after him. And they're kind of a tribute to him, they are a tribute to him for his change from dairy to wine. And a lot of people would ask him, Peter, what is it like being in the wine business now? And he would say, well, in my 50 years of milking cows and so on, nobody ever came up to me in the street and said, Peter, last night I had a really great bottle of your milk. And, in wine, it's just totally different. You get this huge satisfaction of starting out, identifying soils to plant your vines. It's a long process. I mean, it's 3 years of vine growing, vine establishment before you actually get your first fruit. Then obviously into the winery, depending whether it's red or white wine, it can take a year, maybe 2 years or even more before you actually get the product out. So it's a long-term investment, and it's been very fruitful. It's been an amazing district. We're right up against the cold Atlantic. And I say cold Atlantic because South Africa has got the western coastline and the east coastline, which is the warmer water. And just any air sort of moving in is just giving that cooling influence, giving you that longer ripening of grapes, and that brings me to our Sauvignon Blanc. I think our leading wine this year by quite a way has been our 21 Fruitapus Sauvignon Blanc, which is your wine number 3022 on page 9. It's a very popular wine in South Africa and on our overseas markets, and quite rightly so. It's a wine that combines mineral, it combines good tropical fruits, a bit of green, and a little bit of citrus flavors as well. So just a wine with great balance, enormous length. You enter wines for competitions and so on, and I mean, one doesn't want to rattle on about awards, but this wine, the 21 Sauvignon Blanc in your offering at the moment, is actually got one of the top honors in South Africa. It got a double gold at our Veritas wine awards. Not a lot of double golds are awarded. It's the first time we've actually got one for a Sauvignon, so we're really, really proud of that. And so, a wine for all occasions. Wine goes great with food on its own, tremendous. I think, Michael, if I can maybe just move on to the Old Man's Blend, the white blend as well.
Please, go right ahead.
So we do Sauvignon Blanc in 3 guises. We've got our straight estate Sauvignon Blanc, as I mentioned, the 3022 offering. And then we got our entry wine, which is the Old Man's Blend, the white blend, which is predominantly Sauvignon Blanc with a bit of Chenin Blanc added. Chenin Blanc does really, really well in South Africa. I'm sure that Petrus will have a Chenin or 2 there that he'll tell you about. But it's, Chenin is widely planted in South Africa. It comes from the old sort of days of, pre-democracy when, it was all about producing tons but Chenin's also a great blending variety. So we blend it in with Sauvignon unwooded, both are unwooded. The Old Man's Blend White is your wine number 3023 on your offering. It's really everyday drinking.
I think it's 3033, Nick.
Oh, is it 3033? Okay, sorry, I've got
Yes.
the numbers. Okay, here we go. Thanks.
I hope I'm right. Yes. Good.
Yeah, but that's certainly the favorite in our household for every day at the pool. So we had a really good afternoon at the pool today. Just cooling ourselves down from the mid-30 temperatures. And then the third wine that we use that Sauvignon Blanc finds its way into in our portfolio is our Sea Salter, which is a blend of 90% Sauvignon Blanc and 10% Semillon. Actually, a very interesting wine, an interesting winemaking in that Lucas, our winemaker, has for quite a few years he was playing around with sort of Semillon, and a little bit of oaking on Sauvignon Blanc, which is very, very interesting. So we take 20% of the Sauvignon Blanc to oak, to new barrels, and actually fermented in oak in a cold room situation where we keep the temperature very low. So a nice long fermentation. We then blend 10% Semillon in, and a wine that's got an incredible texture to it. You know, the oak, you can hardly pick up the oak on the wine. So the idea is that the oak really just gives the wine an incredible texture, a little bit of complexity. That touch of Semillon brings in a bit of a citrusy component, a little bit of lemon to the wine. But the Sauvignon Blanc just soaks that all up, and it ends up being a really, really good drink. A very different label, the Sea Salter, to our traditional Kruiderpost labeling. So lovely blue colors. It comes in a really smart blue pack, and been very, very, very well received in the marketplace. So certainly one of our leading wines on the premium side of Sauvignon Blanc. So, but yeah, the Darling Hills, as I said, it's a leading site for Sauvignon Blanc in South Africa. We sit in a country with just the most amazing wine areas. I think this evening you're going to get to experience Wellington as well, and Richards Vineyards in Elgin. And just the three areas, Darling, Elgin, and Wellington, are very, very different to each other, but each producing magnificent wines. Yeah, and also just to mention, also a wonderful place to visit, the Cape. Obviously now at the moment, very difficult travel-wise. But we hope that things can open up. Tourism has been really badly hit in our country. I really feel for our restaurants, our hotels, our travel businesses. A lot of small travel businesses that have started up in the last 10 years have really been decimated by the travel bans and COVID. But let's hope we're moving into more positive territory. Certainly we are into our fourth wave here, but a little bit less. I think the current variant has a little bit of a less effect. I think people aren't getting as ill as they were previously.
So Nick,
Michael, we can't move on without, sorry.
Hang on, I just in the chat here, you're getting lots of love for the Sea Salter from several people, and Paul's asking what's the story behind the name of Sea Salter. I think that's an interesting one. So if you can share that.
Yes, Paul. Thanks for that question. Yeah, I was actually traveling about 7 years ago in the UK with our importer, and we were out for a day or two with the Shepherd Neame Brewery Group, and they have many pubs that they supply their beers into, and they also have a pretty extensive wine list. So on that specific day, we were actually visiting in a small town at a one-star Michelin gastro pub. Actually, don't think there are too many of them around, but a really, really nice meal at the Sportsman, and on the coast of Kent, just outside London. And it happened to be in the tiny town of Sea Salter. Total inhabitants about 526, and I was kind of sitting there most of the lunchtime, actually just loving this name, Sea Salter. And I just knew at some stage, somewhere down the line, it would have to be used somewhere. Wasn't quite sure if it would be with the name of one of my kids, or perhaps if I ever wrote a book. But the initial sort of thinking wasn't towards wine, funny enough. It was only about 2 years ago, after Lucas had actually already made the blend up and bottled the wine without us even having a name or actually even knowing what we were going to do. So I said to him, well, look, as far as I'm concerned, it has to be Sea Salter. I must say, he kind of looked at me thinking, what are you doing now? And I went along to our label designers and gave them a brief around, we're up on the hills, the Darling Hills, looking down on the cold Atlantic. You've got these massive waves breaking onto kelp, onto a rocky coastline. And you get this sort of iodine, very, very mineral, salty smell of the Atlantic. And I just said to them, it needs to be blue. It needs to reflect the West Coast. And, a lot of our white wines have got that sort of saltiness in them, underlying sort of saltiness. So sea salter, the wines being mineral, there is a distinctive minerality to the Darling Sauvignon Blanc. So mineral sea salter is I think close to the sea, that salt component. It's actually turned out to be a really nice name. It rings well. The packaging that the team, the design team put together was really spot on, I think. And yeah, we're really excited to have the product out in the market.
And relatively new, and then it went ballistic, right? It became your bestseller very quickly. It was very good.
No, it certainly is very close to being our top seller now, although our old man's blend, the red blend, which my father, together with Lucas, does the final blending on, it's still our top runner. And I think incredibly good value for money for you guys in your offering. Maybe before I give out the wrong number there, Michael, maybe you want to help.
They're on the Red Man's Blend. Yeah, Red Man's Blend, it's actually in 2 sizes this year. And the 3031 is the 750 ml. And then you've done a Magnum for us as well. Thank you, Nick.
We've done a Magnum for the club this year, Michael, which I think,
very cool.
This wine is so good drinking that, a lot of my friends also over the years have said, but why does a bottle of wine only, why is it 750? I mean, come on. So we bring it to you in Magnum, which is great. If you're having a dinner party, a Magnum or 2 on the table is always very exciting and brings a bit of fun.
Yeah, makes you popular at a party for sure.
Yeah. So, and it's a fun blend. We have fun putting it together. As I say, my dad, my old man, Peter Pence, ex-dairy farmer, now chief wine blender, together with Lucas. We have a lot of fun putting this wine together. So, it's always Merlot cab based. That's sort of the base of the wine. It makes up 80-90% normally. And then just a touch of Shiraz brings a little bit of, that sort of spiciness to the wine. But blends, I think just red blends are really fantastic. What you can do with them.
They're versatile. Yes, right.
How versatile they can be. I think in red wine, it's almost the way to go, really.
I'm going to take you back briefly to the Sauvignon Blanc, the 3022. Mark is asking about food pairings and maturity. Jane gave it a drinking window of 2022 through 2023, so to drink it fairly young. But what's your opinion on that, Nick?
I think, the wine drinks well young, but to be honest, if a few bottles slip into the back of the refrigerator or get stuck in the bottom shelf of your cellar and you only pick them up after 4 or 5 years, honestly, our Sauvignon Blancs age incredibly well. You're going to be quite surprised, I think.
And our food writer. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, I think Jane's got it right. You're within 2 to 3 years, it's probably the best window.
Yeah, and our food writer paired it with char-grilled squid. What have you been drinking it with?
Oh, yeah, we are so blessed on the West Coast, Michael. I don't want to tell you. You put out fresh cabillaud, or cob, yellowtail. We got a fish variety called snook. So I think yellowtail is probably my favorite, with a bit of lemon butter just on the barbecue. In fact, the family's in the background somewhere with a barbecue running at the moment.
Oh, nice.
That's going to be steak tonight. Steak and Old Man's Red.
Very good.
Magnum.
Lovely. And I think we're almost out of time for you, but can we talk a little bit about Salt of the Earth?
Yeah. So Salt of the Earth is also a new in your offering. Interesting label, a different label design to the traditional Grootepost wines with the bell. So basically salt of the earth is the idea behind it is that it gives Luca scope to actually reach out into the Darling wine district and actually look at sourcing grapes that we don't have on the farm. You know, one of the challenges in the wine industry is that, like I said earlier, it takes 3 years to actually grow a vine to produce fruit. You know, you don't always get it right with the varietals that you plant or sort of the ones that the market are looking at. So it's always fun to reach out and buy in batches. The Shiraz component, about 2/3 Shiraz and 1/3 Cinsault. So the Shiraz comes from our property, plus we buy it in from a nearby property that has bush vine Shiraz and not trellised, untrellised, dryland Shiraz vineyard. But the Cinsault comes from a really old bush vine block that's 45 years old. So Cinsault is also a variety making a comeback in South Africa. It was always a big volume producer back in the 70s and 80s and made up a lot of the red blends of that time. And sort of lost its way really in quality wise and so on. And a lot of producers actually ripped up those old Cinsault vines, unfortunately. And but there are still patches left where the Cinsauts are doing well. So Cinsault and Shiraz into this wine. We take it to oak as well. Lucas takes it to he does what he calls a co-ferment. So the grapes, the Cinsault grapes and the Shiraz grapes are actually fermented together in an open top fermenter. So the wine's kind of blended from fermentation stage already. Then takes it to 500-liter oak barrels, half the barrels new, half second fills. And yeah, it's just, you know, it's a good year, just over a year in barrel. A wine that's nice and soft, good drinking, a little bit of spiciness to it, but a nice fresh component with the Cinsault.
It's definitely on my list this year. I'll be buying a case of this one for to give it a try. I'm really looking forward to that. Or I'll come visit if things get better.
Yeah, we're still looking forward to your visit, Michael.
I can't believe it. I think it's been 3 years since we were there. It's amazing that it's that long ago. So
yeah, it's been 3 years since it was around about this time.
Time flies, doesn't it? It's incredible.
Yeah, time moves on.
Well, and so I wanted to say, Nick, before we move on to Petrus, is that Nick is doing the master's case this season, and that is for those of you who don't know or who aren't in the program, it's a case of 6 bottles, 3 different styles, and 2 bottles of each, and they've been chosen by Jane. And if you are in the master's case program, once the wines are here in Canada, then we'll be doing a tasting with Jane and hopefully Nick as well, or maybe Lucas, so that you can go through those 3 wines with the winemaker and our master of wine. It's a really great program. We just about a week ago we had Corlia from Bosman from the last South African. It was the master's case, and I just think it's a great program. I'm in both programs, probably everybody knows that, but it'll be a great one. So thanks, Nick, for providing the wines for that. And we can't tell anybody. Yeah, we can't tell anybody what's in that, or else we'd have to kill them all, and that would be difficult. So we won't tell anybody.
But thank you for the opportunity to be part of that. I must say it's very special to have our wine selected for your master case. That is. Our team there was great excitement in the office on that. So
yeah,
very, it's going to be wonderful to be involved.
Yeah, and Carl Bird, actually, if you look at the top right corner of page 8, it says that they are the master's case producer. I hope that's the case on the Quebec version of our offering, but certainly on the Ontario version, it's up there. So with it, we're going to move on, Nick, and anybody who has other questions for Nick, we will have him here for the end as well. We'll have you come back on, Nick, for that, all 3 of the gentlemen. And we will now go to Bosman Family Vineyards, and we are lucky enough to have Petrus Bosman with us today. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We really appreciate it. It was kind of last minute when Corlia became unavailable, so we certainly appreciate that. And as titles go, you are managing director, I understand, and obviously part of the winemaking family there. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Michael. Yeah, as you said, it's been 3 years since we've last seen each other. It was wonderful to stay connected. Yeah, and yeah, unfortunately, Corlia's her daughter has been admitted to hospital, but I'm happy to stand in for her. Yeah, I think as Nick said, today was wonderful day in South Africa. It's been generally quite a cool spring, beginning of summer, but today was a wonderful day. I'm here in Amanus, a beach town, yeah, just east of Cape Town, hour and a half drive. Yeah, and yeah, I love the ocean, and we have a vineyard here in the Emmeline as well, but there's also caught some crayfish today. Only a few days that you're allowed to catch crayfish, so yeah, just spent some time surfing and enjoying the summer, which has been eluding us for much of the summer in South Africa, which is a bit unusual, but today was a good day. Yeah, Bosman Family Vineyards, it's the family farm or vineyard has been the family for 8 generations. So fortunate to carry for the legacy. We are 3 brothers, and my sister is also involved in the business. And I think during these times we also had less time to travel. It's impossible to travel and move around, to have more time to think. So we did start working on a kind of a future plan or picture how we want to Bosman to look in 2040, and we've named it Generation 9. So yeah, in the presentation I will allude to some of those concepts, and it's strange if you think about things and you write it down as a goal. It sometimes happens quite quickly, and so we've this year we had the first a drone arrive to spray some of the vineyards, yeah, and to use technology. A big focus for us obviously is also regenerative agriculture, and yeah, I'll touch on that but just look after the soil for the next generation. Our first wine is the Generation 8 Chenin Blanc, and as Nika said, it's I think by far the most planted white variety in South Africa. But yeah, this one has really been the cornerstone of Bosman. I think some others milk. My mum, we had a barbecue. We just finished our barbecue, and that's what we generally have in a normal day. Yeah, Corley also loves working with Chenin, and some of the Chenin vineyards are, or we pick the grapes, and a small component we try to use nature as well, and the elements nature give us here in South Africa, or especially Wellington, which is a warmer region. And traditionally Wellington was also the dried fruit capital of South Africa. So my great grandfather has been involved. So we still a small component of the Chenin Blanc we put out in the sun to dry in the old, I would say, kind of not ancient but historic dry rack. So I think there's many layers to this wine. It's just not a normal Chenin. So yeah, that's basically the Generation 8 Chenin Blanc.
And if I can just say, Patrice, that I just sent something out in the Opinion Connects yesterday that we're not having the Kloof van Berg this year, a Chenin Blanc typical of South Africa, and we're recommending both the Generation 8 Chenin Blanc and Nick's Groote de Post Chenin Blanc as excellent replacements for it. They were very popular, so we have no problem recommending these 2 wines as a replacement.
Yeah, so that's 2042 or
3042,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, 3042.
And Anais is putting that in the chat for anybody who needs
Yeah.
that as well to reference it there.
Okay. Yeah, then I can probably move on to the Nature and Sun. It's Grenache Noir. So as I said, we are a family business, as I think as many South African wineries are, and thinking about the next generation and really focusing on soil health and quite a big various regenerative practices. But I think this vineyard has been in an organic vine growing program. It's been I think at least in the vineyard has been certified in South Africa. I'm not exactly sure about the technical details. I think Canada has different legislation of how Corlia has labeled it, but nonetheless, that's what we've about 15% of our vineyards are now organically grown, but most of all our vineyards are fair trade certified, which also have an environmental aspect to it. And we started with a compost tea plant on the farm to just introduce more the right cultures in the soil. My brother he's really the farmer, so he's we use goats in or boerbok in Afrikaans we call it, or indigenous goat, and sheep in the winter to help with the and then obviously there's cover crops. So it's been, I must say, the last 5 years it's a big focus on in upping the carbon levels in our soils. A big part of our business is also a vine nursery. We supply vines to other vine growers, and the land that lies fallow, we also have some teff and other summer cover crops, just really keeping it green on the soils. And we believe in that philosophy. So the Grenache is obviously a medium to lighter bodied red wine. Personally I enjoy having, especially on I think it's also a new trend. Red wines don't always have to, as a white replacement, doesn't always have to be heavy and big, but if you something lighter, fresher.
I get the impression, Patrice, you could even chill that red a little bit as well. And
no, definitely,
yeah.
But I've treated it as a white wine.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I can see that from this picture that you guys provided us that is on page 19. To me, I can taste the wine just from looking at that picture. I think it's just so terrific with the sun and the fields and the green. It just, I love the idea of that. This case is on my list as well. So looking forward to trying these. Yeah,
and then the figures next to it is obviously a Grenache Blanc. Interesting, Grenache is also we work with a lot of maybe before we also as Nick as in dairy farmers, we traditionally been nursery men, but always had vineyards. So we have today we have a plant improvement division in the business where we import new grape varieties to South Africa, for example, like the new Hodavela, but also for table and raisin grapes. So it's a big focus on improving and broadening this spectrum of clones and varieties available. And then Richard is also big in his clones. But the Grenache Blanc is a mutation that happened in South Africa. So it's not something that has been imported to South Africa. So it really evolved here in the southern tip of Africa, and we went to pick up the cuttings in that vineyard, and I think as it's explained there, it's an orange wine. So it's been three weeks on its skin, so it's literally made more like a red wine. Yeah, I think as although we have, I think, an age generation family, we try to also try new things, although this isn't such a new thing. It's been done 6,000 years ago, but to give the winemaking team the liberty to experiment. We also have a small wine club here in South Africa with loyal members, so also to give them something different to explore and to broaden their knowledge of wine or the palate. And yeah, some of these wines stick. They get a following, and I think Phileas is definitely one of those wines that we kept on doing. So yeah, also something quite unique.
Yeah, and I always like to differentiate between a trend and a fad. And I think that this natural and orange wine is a trend, not a fad. I don't think it's going anywhere soon. I think it's with us for a while. And it's nice to see you guys add to the possibilities that we can give to our members, because we're finding a great interest from our members for it. So it's great to be able to add it to the mix. So thank you for that. And we're down to about 5 minutes for you, Patrice. So why don't we talk a little bit very briefly about the Optin horse? I think it's worth talking about. And then perhaps the loose cannon and the Sanso.
Sanso, yeah. The Optin horse, I've got it here. It's I think we've got a special location for premium. It's one of the oldest Chenin Blanc vineyards in the country. The oldest planted in 1952. Also in our organic growing program. And yeah, the 2019 vintage, I think that the allocate is quite done normally well. And we got at the wine show called the Mutual Trophy Show, and it won the trophy for the best old wine and the best Chenin Blanc. So there's obviously a big trend on using older vineyards to make wine. It's good to see that the old wine also won the Chenin category, which, yeah, it's kind of, I think it just enforces that old wines do make good wine. So it's nice to see. It's not only, as you say, a fad, but because obviously Chenin Blanc is a big category in South Africa and hardly a very, very difficult category to do well because it's so hotly contested. But yeah, we've been to that vineyard 3 years ago. I remember walking up there with some of your members and team. And then yeah, the next one is Twyfeling Cinsault. Traditionally, Cinsault has been widely the biggest red in our region, Wellington specifically, and we as a family believe to plant the right vineyards in the right areas or regions. And there's this one hill called, we actually call it Hermeteikop, because Cinsault has this, it's sometimes called Hermeteik in Afrikaans. And yeah, it's just the variety just works there. I think it generally works well in Wellington, enjoys the heat, the sunshine. Yeah, bigger berries, so it needs a lot of energy to ripen properly, and we're fortunate to have that sunshine and to ripen it properly to get that beautiful clear red fruit characters coming through.
Wonderful.
The last, sorry,
No, you keep going, please.
Okay. Yeah, my last one is then the loose cannon. Again, it comes from this experiment, try something different, allowing Corlea and the team to do things, but it's made from also Chenin Blanc, so a strong Chenin focus in tonight's presentation. The vineyard is the first vineyard my dad planted when he started farming or came to the farm in 1918. So also quite a nice old vineyard. Yeah, it's just a think yeah, then when we were little boys, and or my grandfathers always said, and the hills in the Cape, I think, or the mountains, there was cannons to, and if the ship came into the harbor or in Cape Town, then the cannons would shoot to tell the farmers to go to town and to take the produce to the ships. So I think that's where the name Loose Cannon is from. We went to look for the cannon on the Groenberg Mountains many a time, but never found it. There's one on Paardeberg Mountain where we also started with a new vineyard and cellar, and we found that one you can still find if we take a walk through the Fynbos, but the one in Groenberg we never found. Yeah,
I think it's worth talking about with this is that it's a Cap Classique, which is done in a traditional method as our members would know it, correct? So it actually, it gets its effervescence in the bottle. It's not tank.
No, it's quite extensive. I think, as you can see in the tasting description from Jane, it's quite extensive least contact in the bottle. So yeah, it's quite a serious a Cap Classique.
Marvelous. Well, thank you very much. And why don't we answer Paul's quickly, and then we'll move on to Richard. But he's saying, where's the name? And I can't pronounce this. Twyfelling come from for the Saint-Saul?
Yeah, Twyfelling is to be in Afrikaans is to be doubtful, not sure, and that vineyard is quite high up in the mountain. It's a farm that's very mountainous and difficult, and so I think they were not sure. The community of at that time wasn't sure if you can make a living on Twyfeling on that farm, that region, and so that's still the name and of the farm. And it's actually a woman, half-Flemish woman that's become a very successful nursery woman, from Twyfeling, and it's a beautiful house now, built in 1818. So my brother lives there now. So Twyfeling means not to be sure, and it's been quite tough those years. If you read the journals, leopard and just to tame the land and making a living in that today it's obviously we have a lot more resources and to farm and to do stuff.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Patrice. Really appreciate it. And Richard, I hope you are still there. We'll move on to Elgin and to Richard Kershaw. And Richard is also the chief bottle washer and does all the different tasks of his winery of his own name, Richard Kershaw Wines. And Richard, what I remember of Elgin was this kind of bowl idea. If you can picture it, if you can give a better picture of it than I can, because I can only see it and I can't describe it, but it was so absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah. And can everybody hear me fine? Yep.
Yes, perfectly.
So Elgin is basically surrounded by hills in what is a tipped saucered shape. So the back of the saucer is up into the Groenland mountain vineyards, hills or mountains, and then the front is a little bit lower at about 500 meters that tips to the front, which basically runs into the sea on the what is Kleinmont, which is basically a small seaside town just on the other side of the mountains. So effectively, it sort of has that ability to capture the coolness of the sea and the effects of the sea breezes, but at the same time, being a tipped saucer, it also is surrounded by mountains, which means that you are trapping in a lot of cloud cover and also coolness from firstly the altitude, but secondly from you get our Cape Doctor, which is the predominant wind, the Cape Southeaster. And on that note, I think actually we've heard from Nick and Patrice, and apart from today when it was absolutely glorious here in Grabo, we didn't quite get to the high 30s, but we certainly got to about 29, 30. But this has been an exceptionally cool vintage. And predominantly that's because we've had a lot of the southeaster blowing here, which has created lots of cloud cover and rain, and we've had rain after rain, which it can start getting challenging with regard to our pest management in the vineyards, but yeah, it's certainly a challenging area. But moving on to the wines, we are showing tonight a couple of wines. I'm going to talk through them, and then obviously we can refer to some more on the list, but they're all in fact under the label GPS. So the Kershaw GPS, the first wine actually is the one behind me. It's a brand new wine, and it's a Sauvignon Semillon, and sorry, my apologies, it's a Semillon. And the GPS range, just before we get into the nitty gritty, because we're going to have a couple of these, and there are actually 4 on the offering. So this wine is from the what we call the grape positioning system. So it's doesn't stand for the traditional way, but it basically is an area of grapes which I have found fascinating, and they often come from very far-flung, weird and wonderful areas. And on the offering, there's what have we got here? We've got there's the Chardonnay, the Pinot, and we're going to talk about the Syrah just now, as well as this one. But just referring to those, they are unusual parcels that I found over the years outside of the Elgin district per se, which just basically sort of really attracted me, because they were either fantastically interesting old bush vines, or they had interesting soils like the limestone that goes for the GPS Chardonnay, or they were just the bush vines with a Syrah. Again, I'll come on to that. The Pinots from Hamel-Nada, but this one is obviously being 2 grapes, SSB. This is Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. And funnily enough, the Sauvignon indeed comes from Hamel-Nada, whereas the Sauvignon Blanc, sorry, the Semillon comes. I'll start again. The Semillon comes from Hamel-Nada, sorry, and the Sauvignon Blanc comes from, actually does come from Elgin, but increasingly the 21 will both come from Hamel-Nada on the basis that that's where we are sourcing both those grape varieties. And in fact, this is actually an exciting wine to show you, because for those on the offering, this is the very first wine we actually got it on sale. I've actually one wine I've got in my glass. Unfortunately, I'm not in the right frame of mind to drink it. I'm suffering a little bit, but that's
on doctor's orders, if I heard
the doctor's orders. I mean, right, so I can't drink, but it is a fabulously aromatic wine, where the Semillon is about 52% and the Sauvignon is 48%, and it's a kind of classic white Bordeaux blend, whereby I've taken the Semillon actually comes from a very old block, which has a little bit of the Semillon Gris, which is that mutation you get over a period of time. And so it's got wonderful concentration and density, and also a lot of that sort of classic grapefruit character. And I use quite a lot of new wood on that. Not necessarily all French, a bit of American, but it's basically a combination. And the idea behind that is to get the sort of the richness and oily character that you get from Semillon, that classic vanilla and coconut and all the sort of lovely things that you get in wood, the lees contact, the creaminess, and then combine that with the Sauvignon Blanc, which again is about 70% in tank, and the rest goes into a little bit of wood itself, because it works well, especially with the good acidities that we are getting both here in Elgin and in Hamel-Nada. So as a blend, I think it works really nicely. And personally, it's a very exciting wine to show. It's, as I say, the first time it's been, not just for a premium, it's the first wine I will be, this one has not been anywhere in the world. You are going to be the first to receive it.
Thank you.
Yeah, as you will also the Sauvignon Blanc, which is on the list, the Sauvignon Blanc Smuggler's Boot. Actually, whilst I'm on that, this one is item 3059. It's on page 28. Got it all my details here. But yeah, it's a classic kind of, lovely lemon and lime acidity. As I say, that cut is tempered by the Semillon, giving a bit more weight and fatness. That's a little bit of a food pairing. I think it works really well, this with oysters. At the moment, we've got some lovely oysters going on, although unfortunately that was what I got food poisoning from, so I'm not in the mood.
That won't be tomorrow then, right?
but for those who are on the right side of that, definitely goes well with that. I have to say, tuna sashimi, and the tuna's looking good here at the moment, but if you can get some nice tuna in Canada, a little bit of a sort of a light wasabi or soy dipping dressing. Fantastic with a wine like this. So what was I actually had one more thing, because I was quite an interesting one, I thought. Asparagus and peas, sort of pasta primavera, a very, very nice sort of combination for a more meat-free option. So yeah.
And with a white sauce, then I would say yes.
Yeah, definitely, because obviously with the acidity that it's packing, it's definitely going to cut through that, and it's got a wonderful backbone of acidity, and it's got that richness. So yeah, it will work really, really well.
Wonderful.
So yeah,
I'm going to try that when they arrive.
Yeah, no, it's I can actually say we had it open today. We being warm day, we actually thought, well, let's crack it open. I haven't got very many samples here, so it was a chance to. And on the second one, we're moving to the Smuggler's Boot. So this one is stalwart, the Pinot Noir. We've had it on the offering a few times. It's item 3061, also page 28. And what I wanted to talk to you about this one was that we've had it's been a bestseller, but actually the 2019 one of the top 5, or it came in the top 5 sort of Pinot Noirs of the country, which was very exciting. It was a very good year for us in Elgin, of which this mostly heralds from. Not all, it's actually partly Hamel-and-Ardor as well. But the cool climate, the Elgin fruit really, the 2019 fruit worked really well. It had a little bit more sort of that wild strawberry intensity, and a little bit more earthiness as well, which to me is quite important to give you complexity. It's not just a fruity wine. It's actually got a little bit more, almost a Burgundian sort of edge to it. So it's a wine that really kind of snaps off the palate. So it's even though it may be a humble Smuggler's Boot, I would definitely urge you to have a look at that one. Maybe compare that with the GPS, which is purely Hamel-and-Ardor. Hamel-and-Ardor on its own tends to give you that little bit more richness. The Elgin gives that little bit more acidity. So the two as a blend work quite nicely. So it just doesn't have as much wood as the other one. So it's a little bit more sort of elegant and sort of slightly less, probably drinking a little bit sooner, whereas the GPS will last a little bit longer. As a wine to pair with food, it's brilliant with charcuterie. Important actually, sort of dishes with fat on them like charcuterie works well, because of course the acidity will cut through it. So actually works really, really, really nicely. So I've got here a cassoulet works nicely, and if you want to go monkfish or a fish dish, here's where the Pinot is going to really sing. As for those who with Pinot, it's sort of got that lightness, but it's got that little bit of tannin as well. So it will work with a slightly meatier fish.
And I think people often think that Pinot is a lot lighter than it really is. I think it can stand up to a lot of foods that people don't think it would. Like charcuterie, I wouldn't think of it, and I think it would do wonderfully well.
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, I think that a lot of it's in the color. Is that slightly kind of psychosomatic look at the color, which is light, and then assuming that the wine will be light, and yet it actually delivers, quite a punch once you get it in your mouth. And I think that's what makes Pinot so compelling and fascinating. So it's one of the reasons I love it anyway. So yeah, and of course, so where do we go straight to? Oh yeah, the GPS. Yes, here we go. So
have you got it, Richard, or do you want me to help you through? No, you found it?
Yeah, GPS is
okay.
Yeah, I've got it here. Yeah, it's 3058. And whilst it appears on page 27, it also appears on page 7 because it's a coup de coeur. So for those buying that, it's one of the wines that Jane really felt stood out, and it's a lovely wine. It's an area or block of vineyards that I take from this Clane River. So it's in the middle of nowhere. There is one little cellar next to it that make it so. For those familiar, it's towards Stamford. They're going out to Bradasdorp, so sort of going down towards Cape Agulhas. But it's an old bush vine block of Syrah. It's on Glenrosser soils, but the block itself tends to have fairly low yields. Although we've been working with them because the whilst it's a coolish climate, you do get a little bit more heat there, but you get this funneling that comes in from the lagoon actually back in Stamford. So it does cool it down, especially at nighttime. But the thing is, the key thing is to try and also keep the vineyards moist, or not moist, but sort of full of earthworm activity, so to speak. So we've been mulching it over the last 5 years. And in fact, it's actually improved remarkably. We've been tracking it on something called Fruit Look, but very technical. But basically, it's just to look at how it's growing over the last sort of 5 years. And we're getting a lot more intensity and a lot more to the fruit. And in fact, actually, I have to say, every year it gets better and better, this block. And this is no exception. 18 was at the end of the drought year, so that mulch was absolutely critical because the groundwater for the vines was quite low, so they had to really dig deep. Ironically, it was a relatively sort of moist vintage, but it wasn't enough really to keep it sort of supplemented. It needed to get groundwater. Yeah, it just actually meant that the mulch kept the whole thing going. So ultimately, this vineyard actually produced incredibly well. And it's, you know, for those who have bought it before, it's got a classic kind of this Chinese 5-spice. I always call it, but it's got a really interesting pepperiness as well. We get a high level of rotundone here, which is something which I enjoy and I look for in Syrah. But yeah, it's one to go for. And I haven't really spoken about any of the winemaking techniques, but basically we are doing, as we are with all the wines, regardless of the smuggler's boot or GPS, we're doing it all naturally. We don't do any sort of too much involved. We don't try and add acidity or enzymes or any of those things. We try and let it go naturally. And we actually do a little bit of delestage on this, which if you read Jane's note, we do a little bit on the Pinot. We do it only on the Pinot, but we've been doing it on this as well recently. And it actually works really well. In fact, now I think about it, I'm lying because the 18 did not get the delestage. It was actually from the 90. So, but anyway, the concept's still there. But the idea is a slightly lesser extraction. But anyway, that was 2018. And
then, Rich, I'm going to interrupt you because I think it's important that people understand that the way that you speak about wine, you are a master of wine, and there are only about 420 of those in the world. And so you see it from a very different perspective, and you're able to describe it in a way that I think it gives us a better sense of it, that it just really I think that you have you come from a different point of view, right? That it's very interesting to make wines from the point of view of a master of wine. And we do have a couple of questions here. A question about your sales broken down. Like I think what Mark means is like between Smuggler's Boot and the GPS in percentages. And I'd also be curious about the percentage that you export. I don't think it's a ton, is it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, in terms of the breakdown, basically, what I didn't really say about the Smuggler's Boot because I knew time was pressing, but effectively, Smuggler's Boot has been an experimental range. And the idea behind it was we are sourcing interesting and unusual blocks from all around, also young vines, things like that, to bring in the cellar. We're playing around with a lot of different fermentation techniques. It's all natural ferment, but we're using ceramics and breathable plastic eggs or capsules as we've got, and also concrete and so on and so forth. We're doing inserts and alternatives. And that's really kind of something that we work really hard at. And from that, we will find something really, really quirky and interesting, which becomes a GPS. So in terms of the Smuggler's Boot, they're always going to be a lesser volume. So it's unusual, obviously, because they are the lower priced wines, but they all hit about 2,500 bottles each. The only exception being the GSM, which is about 4,000 bottles, only because it's a little bit more entry level. Well, not entry, but it's a little more affordable. And I can make a little bit more of that. But these are all about 2,500 bottles. In terms of the sales or the volumes for the GPS, they're all about between 2, 4, and 2. So sorry, that's the wrong way around. 2,000 bottles to 2,400 bottles. So these are small volumes. They're not vast volumes. Whereas my clonal selections are more between 8 to 13,000 bottles. That would be the rough background. And when we come to the deconstructed, they are on the smaller side, about 300 or 400 bottles. So that would be the question for the broken up. And yes,
and
they're all.
Carl was asking about indigenous, yeah.
Yeah. So every single wine, we don't have any yeast at all in the cellar. Everything is natural ferment, from Sauvignon Blanc right through to the thing. Actually, I'm lying. Sorry. The little bit of portion of tank fermented, we sometimes inoculate that because it has to be racked. But in some cases, we've done a dirty juice ferment and allowed it to go through natural and then racked it off afterwards, and that's been really successful. But generally, we do a natural ferment on everything apart from that very small bit of Sauvignon Blanc. There was another question, Michael, you had. What was the other one?
No, I think it was the sales, and we've got the indigenous yeast. I think we've got it covered. Oh, you know what? There was one that came to me directly, was about bush vines. Do you mind describing that, about how that differs from other ways of trellising?
Yeah, it's a more traditional sense, though. For those familiar with the Rhone, it's sort of like a gobelet, apart from the fact that it's not, the strands aren't sort of all brought up to the top. They are actually a more open, straggly set of vines. But the idea behind it was, it's obviously doesn't require a trellis, so in terms of financing it, it's a lot cheaper to capitalize the vineyards. And in many cases, it's been found to produce more interesting and more complex berries, largely because you haven't got soldiers on a vine, which are all exposed in equal ways. You've got a more sort of, less heterogeneous model. You've got some more riper berries, less riper berries. And certainly the older vines tend to be a little bit more bush vine orientated. I have to say, although I do follow and adhere to that, and I'm sure there'll be some lovely thoughts from Patrick and Nick, I do find that there is I remember working in Cellar previously, and there are some great bush vines, but there's also some lesser good stuff where the trellis does tend to work, especially with your straggly varieties like Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc. You wouldn't work really well with a bush, but things like Syrah or Chenin work extremely well as a bush vine because they're not creepers. That's really the difference.
Great, thank you. And have we covered? Not yet. No, the deconstructed.
One more.
Yeah,
so
please go ahead. I don't think we have to worry about it being the top of the hour. I think everyone's enjoying.
Really good.
Yeah, so you just keep at it.
Just if we do a couple of minutes, actually the back of the GPS, you'll notice that there's a little bit of that great positioning system. We've actually linked up with a company called, where are we? What 3 Words? You can just see it behind me. And it's a little app that if you've ever had a chance to use it, it's a bit like a kind of Google Maps. And they've split the entire world into these 3 by 3 meter grids. So that I think something like 4.5. Yeah, yes. It's 4.5 trillion of them, or something ridiculous. And they all these 3 by 3 meter grids get given 3 unique identifiers in terms of words. And if you put those words into the thing, that you can, unfortunately, I can see it slightly cut off, but it's isolated, earthier, and mysterious. And that will basically lead you to the vineyard if you throw that into the app.
Did you pay for that? To get those 3 words?
No, they are complete. So obviously, being a 3 by 3 meter grid, we also had the luxury of having a vineyard that has a lot of 3 by 3 meter because it's clearly it's about half a hectare large. So we chose the most interesting and apt 3 words. I will give you that, Michael.
That's right. Good.
But it's quite cool because it sort of gives you a much more precise definition of the address rather than a sort of, a more sort of esoteric sort of look at it.
Very cool.
Okay, so last but not least, item 3064. This is a special wine. It appears actually towards the end of the offer. It's on page 58 and 59. Actually, after the Italians have done their stuff. So what I've got is it's a little box. It's a gift box of 3 of our single vineyard, single clone wines. Now, just to give you a little bit of background to this, these are going back to my clonal selection. And what happens here is that the selection of clones that I use for the Syrah are based from different vineyards. And each of those vineyards tends to, within it, have 1 or 2 or 3 clones. And what we do is we actually harvest them all separately. So what we will find is we'll have, say, it's very boring, the names, but SH9, for example, that may be on, say, a Cartreff soil or a decomposed granite soil. And SH22 may also be on the same soil. But the idea being is that what we do is we harvest them independently of each other to see how they form. And then what we do is we have an algorithm that we've created for our Chardonnays, Syrahs, and Pinots that we can then have a maturation cycle. So once we've fermented them on their skins, pressed them off, we then put them into barrels, of which there will be some new, some second, some third. But importantly, it will depend on the soil type and the clone as to what wood they'll get. They'll all be French coopers, and so most of them are from Burgundy and the Rhone. But what we will do, dependent, if it's a lighter clone like 9C, it's quite light and ethereal and lifted, you will have slightly less new wood, and the coopers will be approaching that fruit with a slightly different elegant delicacy, whereas 22 with a bit more grunt and a bit more mid-palate will tend to be in a slightly, perhaps a bit more new wood and a little more grunty wood, if I can put it as coarsely as that. So we've got, and basically these will all be put into my clonal selection, and the Syrah comes from something like about 13 different batches. And that makes up a clonal section. But I started in 15 to produce these. I thought, well, why don't we harvest them, show them on their own? It's a bit like a kind of Premier Cru or Grand Cru Vineyards site as you would get in Burgundy. Why don't we bottle these on their own? We're just doing small amounts. It's an intellectual exercise. There's 3 of them. There's only 300 bottles of each, as I alluded to earlier. And the idea being is that it gives you a chance to really try the clones and the soil type together. Now, what's quite exciting about it is for these wines, you're going to have 2 soil types, two clones. Clone 9C in the box is clone 9C and clone 22, and they're both on the same soil type. In fact, those vineyards are no more than 10 meters apart. So they are very, very closely harvested. And the idea is you can see the difference between the clone on that same soil type, regardless, taking no other different factors. So it's a very interesting kind of way of looking at it. And then you can take the last clone, which is also 9C, compare that with the 9C from the Cartref, and look at that one on Bockerfeld Shales. It's grown, the other 9C is grown about 5 kilometers away, but you've got the opportunity to try the 2 together, where you've got one on decomposed granite and one on shale soil, which is over clay. So the same clone treated in a different way because of the soil type. So it is a little intellectual. And it would be great to open them all at once, but obviously they aren't the cheapest wines in the world. So, but if you've got a nice group of 10 people coming around, that can work, or just enjoy them on their own. But
yeah, my question was going to be: is that as interesting and fun to do as it sounds? But I think I know the answer to that. To make these wines must be remarkable, and to drink them would be just as fun. And I think everybody on the call knows that I tend to buy the Collector's Corner, and no one's told my wife about it yet. So I'm going to continue until that happens. So when they go in, go ahead.
No, that wonderful wines to make. And this year you've got the 17 in pack, which is arguably one of the finest vintages that we've had for Syrah. Often been packed with 15 and 17 are kind of the go-to vintages. The 17 is a fabulous year. It's very seamless tannins, very elegant lifted fruit, and a wine that will age for a long, long time. So these definitely aren't wines that I would take out of their box and have quite yet. These are definitely wines that will age. If there's anything to go by, the 15s are just starting to show nicely. So I would definitely keep those 17.
I know exactly the people that I will have at the house when I open these, for sure. And I'm sure all of our Opinion members have the same thing, where there are certain people you wouldn't open these wines for, and others that you just delight in opening those, sharing them with, right? It's just, it's great. And we will give you one final question, and then we'll get all 3 of you for any final questions. But what are your 3 words for the GPS? Do you know the 3 words?
Oh,
yes.
The GPS are, well, the thing is, oh, hang on. The GPS one, that's the Syrah. Yes, the 3 words are isolated, earthier, and mystically. That was the words there.
Oh, that was for that one. Okay.
That was for that one. But for these ones, so if I'm going to just push this to the camera, the Kershaw, sorry, the deconstructed also have a what 3 words on the back. All of them will be independent as well. Oh, and also, sorry, I didn't mention, I was told to it, they're all been signed. So you can make that out just hopefully on the screen now. I've signed each and every bottle.
Agent, thank you for doing that. And it is, I want to make sure I don't say this wrong, but it looks like it's in a wood case as well, is it?
Yeah, I think
Yes,
so,
that's,
yeah.
yeah, very good. All right. Well, now we've got Nick and Patrice back. Thank you, Richard, for your time. And if anybody has any, Paul wants the invite. Yes, that's when I open your deconstructed. Thank you very much. We are 10 minutes past, but almost everybody stayed with us. Thank you. It was such an interesting evening, afternoon for us here in Canada, and evening for you gentlemen. Thank you. It was so engaging and fun to hear about your wines. And I tell you, it's tough for me not to buy all 80 wines every time because it's just always so cool. I really enjoy that. So we really appreciate it. And Patrice, I had neglected to ask you about the Adama program when you were speaking of your wines. That Adama program, there's a portion of that goes to a very specific program that you run at Bosman, right?
Yes, Michael. Yeah, I think fundamentally the Dharma Trust owns nearly a third of the company, so they're co-owners, and they just received the annual dividend, all the staff this time of the year, and then about 2% of all wine sales go to a specific program, or it's actually different, the foundation, which primarily found a school, primary school, and transport system, and support healthcare. So it's been quite relevant in these times as well, that we can be in a fortunate position to support the community where we need it.
Thank you very much. Well, Richard, Nick, and Patrice, absolutely appreciate the time you've taken. And I say this often as well, so some of you will heard it before, but just connecting us to the winemakers and the owners of these wineries. It's just the whole idea of Opimian, makes the joy of wine so much more joyful for us here in Canada. And the fact that these wines are exclusively available to Opimians in Canada is remarkable, and we thank you all for that. So I hope you all stay well, and your families stay well, and best to everybody in your circles. And we will talk to you again soon. Thank you, Opimian members. Thank you, Anais, for running the board. Appreciate it. And we'll see hi, Colette. And we'll see everybody on the next one. Take care.
Michael, thanks very much. A Merry Christmas to you and your team.
Such a pleasure. Yes. Thank you so much. And to you as well. Okay.
Thank you. Have a blessed
Bye-bye.
Christmas. Bye-bye.